Last week, we looked at early childhood development and also touched on school readiness.
A child needs to be emotionally and socially ready to go to school.
This week, we continue with the discussion focusing on school health and adolescents.
Different children have different challenges, but I think generally speaking, peer pressure.
So with the coastal schools opening 3 days ago, all children are now in class. All the anxiety in children and parents of those starting school for the first time has now hopefully settled. It's now all systems go as these young ones join others in the journey to matric and beyond. Last week, as you heard, we discussed child development and school readiness. We took you through development from a child, from birth to school-going age, and learned all about school readiness. So today we continue our discussion on child development, and in this show focus on school-going age children up to adolescents. We'll take you through development and health issues, of course, in children from 6 to 18 years of age. Share your views, concerns, questions on this topic by calling us on Johannesburg 714-6843, 6847 or 6857. Or interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk, and on Twitter at SABC Health Talk, including our email address, healthtalk@sabc.co.za. I'm Dr. Sello Mataung, and this is Health Talk.
Every child is different. Age difference doesn't coincide with their peers' intellectual needs. A child can grow up so fast physically, but when it comes to learning, it might be challenging. Learning begins at home. Parents should encourage more reading and check the progress of their kids' schoolwork. If parents, kids, and teachers work together, kids tend to progress much better than a child who doesn't get any attention from parents. After school doesn't really mean school ends. There is this program that government has introduced called ASP, which is after school program to help parents and teachers for kids to remain at school in order to do their homeworks. There are so many things that interfere with learning, like food and environment. Parents must make sure that their kids have a healthy breakfast before they start learning. Overcrowded classes can also have a very bad impact on children's learning. Walking long distances to school is also a problem that government must look at all times. School development starts at an early age. Sorting, matching, and categorizing are essential skills for reading and spelling as well as in maths. This makes it easier for teachers to spot a child with a learning problem.
As soon as they suspect that there's a problem, they do intervention with the child themselves. They also refer the child to the school-based support team.
This is where specialists are recommended for kids with difficulties in learning. And the problem is most parents cannot afford to pay for these therapies. And on this, government might need to look at it a little bit deeper.
Right. Development is the gaining of skills in all aspects of a child's life from birth to adolescence. Children are said to reach developmental milestones in how they play, learn, speak, behave, and move. Now, as we discussed last week, we think about growth and development in 5 stages. Infancy, from birth to 1 year, and then we get to toddlerhood from 1 to 2 years, and then middle childhood, or rather early childhood from 2 to 6, middle childhood from 7 to 12, and adolescence from about 13 to 19. And as we said, in today's show, we're going to track development from middle childhood to adolescence. In other words, from about 6 right up to adolescence. To help us understand what to expect from children in these stages, we have 3 special guests. From last week, you'd remember we had Anita Dekaris Wagner, if I can get that right, who is an educational psychologist. And we also have Professor Lorna Jacqueline, who's a developmental pediatrician based at Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. And we also are joined today by Mumtaz Ahmed, who is an occupational therapist. Ladies, welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Right. We continue with our story. And let me start with you, Prof. Jacqueline. Let's start in this segment, middle childhood, from about 6, 7 to 12. Physically, what can we expect, or what can parents expect from children in these ages?
So, these children are very active,
right,
and are able to look after themselves. They need to be able to walk and run and play and really just do things that their peer group do on the sports field.
Right.
But the physical ability of the child is the basis for learning and emotional activity as well, because children that are not coping physically are going to not emotionally, will have emotional problems.
Right.
And so there are children who aren't. So we do need to address the child's physical ability, especially boys, because boys' self-esteem is very much lodged in their ability to compete on the sports field,
right,
to play soccer together, to climb trees together, whatever. If they don't keep up with their peer group, they're going to have emotional challenges. Girls are more language orientated. If the girls are not that physically orientated, girls find other ways of dealing with their social needs.
Right.
But boys' social needs are based on their physical activity at that stage.
Right.
So I think for parents, it's really just looking at the children with other children,
Yeah.
and if they're not keeping up, there's a problem.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to you because I'd like us to also look at the health aspect, in children in that age. But let me invite a comment from Mumtaz Ahmed in terms of, the physical skills for children in that age group.
I think that the children in this age group are using a lot of the skills that have been developed in the previous years,
right,
which we call the foundation skills. And now the building blocks are really setting on. So we're looking at things in gross motor wise, like hopping and skipping and jumping. And then as we progress to 8, 9, 10, hopping and skipping and jumping develop into star jumps, and then eventually into a more refined sports form, where the timing, the sequencing, using the body movements together become very much the challenge of the child's gross motor.
Right.
On a more fine motor level, the child is now using the pre-writing skills more as writing skills, being able to hold pencils appropriately, writing on different types of materials, copying from a blackboard, those type of things. And I think that there's more refined use of a lot of the tools with their hands. So they don't need assistance anymore to open school bags and lunch boxes.
Right.
They can do this independently. And then on a perception level, they're starting to give more meaning to what they're seeing, what they're reading. So instead of just saying it's a square, it will be, it's a blue square, it's a big blue square. Okay. And that perception skills start to enhance through about 12 years into letter formation, language development, reading, and comprehension.
Right. Obviously, it gets better with age, obviously.
Yes, he has to progress through that.
Anita, in terms of psychological and emotional development, what can parents expect in this age group?
Children are beginning to form relationships far more in their peer group.
Right.
So the peer group becomes important, not in the way it is in adolescence, but being able to feel comfortable, to have social skills, to be able to engage with the peer group. That's very, very important. To have a sense of your own personal competence, because it's very much an age where skill development is so important. Right. And children are beginning to be able to compare themselves to others. Yeah. So they know if they're poor in some area. So it's very much an age where children are refining those skills. I think that's a very important aspect.
But you mentioned, social interaction with others. There's often the issue of gender, in young ones. Apparently at some point they prefer just being by themselves, and at some point they start recognizing that there's another a type of gender, but they just leave it at that. They don't interact. Just take us through that.
Generally, children preschool might play with both boys and girls. it's less defined. Generally, in primary school, and this is very general, children will prefer to play with only others of their own gender. And so that can be a struggle if you are a child who perhaps doesn't enjoy the things that the boys or girls at your school are doing. If you're a tomboy, for example, and you're a girl, or if you're a boy who prefers quiet activity, it can be difficult.
Difficult, yeah. Let's get back to health issues, Prof. Jacqueline. We mentioned in the earlier years that, especially around the time that they start taking their children to creches and stuff, that, they start getting a little more sick. The health issues of, in children between ages 6 and 12.
So, first of all, not all children are healthy, and not all children are physically healthy. And, just pointing out that these children are special children, and that parents need support with these children particularly. I think most of it's a fairly healthy age, the age that we're going through, because if they've been through creche and they're now at school, they've had all the infections, and they're actually relatively healthy. So children who are coughing at school, who are ill, need to actually go to a doctor and be attended to, because health issues become more important. But I think the important thing with children of this age is not so much health as nutrition. And malnutrition can be the wrong nutrition.
Okay, I just want to stop at this point, because I'd like us to discuss nutrition in the next segment. But now I believe we have Faith on the line from Midrand. Hello, Faith.
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing?
We're good, thank you.
Good.
We'll just take your question because we've run out of time. We'll just take your question and then, of course, respond to it after the break.
Sorry, but it's not really a question. My name is Faith. I'm actually a junior optometrist at the Tshwane district.
All right.
What I've seen is that I've actually started with the school health program. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it, but what we do is that we go to schools mostly in the outskirts of Tshwane, like your Rayton, your Dark City. I bet people don't even know about those places, but they actually are part of Tshwane, and they're just really out there. Well, there's a team. There's us optometrists, there's dentists, there's nurses. We get to the schools and then we help kids with whatever needs that they might have. But what I do is basically we test and screen patients, kids rather, for their eye problems and so forth.
Correct,
and one thing that I've noticed as well is that there is a really a big problem, a concern rather, that when kids what I've noticed is that a lot of kids actually, whether in the private or the secondary level,
all right.
They really do have an eyesight problem.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. Thank you very much for your call, and please continue doing the great work that you're doing. Okay, time for a quick commercial break.
Didier Drogba, a footballer from Ivory Coast, was named as the third most influential celebrity in Africa.
Where I saw him display, he's a very nice player. He always make an impact.
Drogba donated his $5 million endorsement fee to the construction of a hospital in Abidjan.
Well, there are some lesser known football stars in the continent that you haven't met.
Really?
And are deserving of more attention.
I think we will do better.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
We continue our discussion and focus on supporting and enhancing development of children in this age group, 6 to 12 years of age. We still have 3 guests, Anita de Wegner, Wegner, Prof. Lorna Jacqueline, and Mumtaz Amot. Okay. We just took a call from Faith. I mean, she does quite obviously good work out there. Now, she talked about some of the very good things, obviously, that she's doing. I mean, it reminds me of the minister making a comment, having visited a few schools where they discovered that, in fact, there were some children that couldn't see. And clearly, if you can't see, I mean, learning becomes impossible. And now it is about the health and nutrition in children. But perhaps just before we start on the nutrition issue, let's link up and show you some clip that we've prepared on how to prepare those lunch boxes.
Children, the pride and joy of their parents, energetic, inquisitive, and full of life. But keeping these school-going bodies healthy is often daunting. Mother of 3, Yolisa Sibanda, is too familiar with the nitty-gritties of packing school lunches.
I do have challenges because I've got a 10-year-old and I've got a 7-year-old. And my 10-year-old has his certain food and my 7-year-old too. So normally I ask them. The 10-year-old does not like cheese and the 7-year-old likes cheese. So normally I'll ask them to ask me what they want, because if I don't do that, the lunchbox comes back home. So every day I have to think about what type of lunch they want.
And a solution for those unhappy with mommy's efforts?
Kids do swap lunch boxes. Don't say your child will not do it. They will do it. Trust me.
For parents aiming to please their little ones' palates, dietitians have these tips.
With brown bread. Brown bread is higher in fiber or roughage, which will actually help to sustain the energy throughout the day. You can put in different types of fillings. Second part of the lunchbox would be fresh fruit or dried fruits. So you definitely want to go for the fruits in season. Those are always the most affordable. The next part would be some dairy. So one of your yogurts, a low fat or a fat free. As well, if not, then you can go for a low fat flavored yogurt or a smoothie, which could be ready made, or you could make it at your house with a blender with fresh fruits and yogurt. Instead of your other crisps or your chips, your Simbas or knickknacks, you can go for popcorn, homemade, or pretzels, as well as little packets of your nuts, if they're allowed these at their school, or little packets, 25 grams to 30 grams of your biltong.
Often overlooked, the importance of water to growing bodies.
Water is actually #1 drink, and we should try and get the kids to drink it from a young age, since the body is made up of 60 to 70% water, and we lose it constantly, even when kids are in the classroom, by breathing, talking, playing in the playground. So water is #1. It will hydrate you, as well as it's got no added sugars in, unlike your fizzy cool drinks and your juice. Even your 100% fruit juice has still got too much sugar in for the child.
With a few days before school starts, the options of scrumptious and healthy lunches are limitless. Stefina Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, of course, nutrition is quite important. Let's just take it up from there. And I'm afraid we need to just do it quickly because we're running out of time. Yeah.
Lunch is important, but breakfast is more important.
Okay, right.
So children need to have a good breakfast before they go to school.
Right.
And you can't miss breakfast. So and then we're looking at kiddies. We know that obesity is a big problem.
Yes.
So again, their school lunch is important. It's not just that your children eat, but what they eat is very important. Okay. So I think parents do have to feed their children appropriately.
And emphasize on that breakfast, because not often, quite often, many of them don't actually have breakfast, isn't it? Because they wake up too late and it's time to quickly wash and get ready for school and so on. In terms of emotional support now, I mean, especially the role that parents should play in supporting kids in that age group. Your comment?
I think it's very important that parents are involved in the school so they know what's going on,
Right.
and then involved in the lives of their children. So you have to ask your children what's happening at school.
Right.
And generally when parents fetch from school or when they get home and they say, how was your day? Fine. What did you do? Nothing. But the parent needs to explore a little bit more.
Yeah.
Often children will tell you when it's inconvenient for you, like when you're putting them to bed.
Yeah.
But it's really important to listen and to not assume too much,
Yeah.
because sometimes parents rush off to school and shout at teachers or think other children were at fault. But really to listen and try and understand what the child is telling you.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, not all homes are the same. I mean, there are some homes where parents are not there at all. And so what you basically are saying that it's important that whatever, even if it's, I suppose, a brother or uncle, or at least if there's some parent figure that spends some time with the child, it's important, isn't it?
It can be the helper at home,
Yeah.
it can be a granny.
Yeah, all right. Mumtaz, in terms of physical development, supporting it, I mean, obviously, just now we spoke about the problem of obesity, which is quite huge. What are some of those practical tips you can give to parents to get the children to be active?
The first thing I'd like to say is that I think we forget that when the kids start going to school that we need to stop playing with them as parents. It is important that the parent still drives this activity at home, and by using a household contents. Things like just having a ball, a parent and a child can stimulate so much of energy and activity in the child. We can take it from just kicking and throwing a ball to suspending a ball in a little shopping bag on a washing line and hitting it away. Then moms are going to freak at this, but to take cushions, duvet covers, ottomans, and create a little obstacle course at home for your kids to climb onto, above, under. These are washable.
That sounds chaotic.
It does sound chaotic, but this is what creates the child's body awareness and their body scheme, which will eventually develop into good writing skills in the classroom.
Yeah.
So it's all pertinent to what is the body doing and how is it responding. Another thing is shopping. Take the kids along shopping and don't let them be passive players in this process. Let them help you reach from the counters, let them pack bags, let them carry the bags. That heaviness will develop shoulder control, which will help with writing again. So a lot of activities in the home environment, but make it structured for your kids.
Right. I mean, the biggest problem these days is these electronic gadgets and the television.
Yes.
That instead of, spending time on the bicycle, jumping, hopping and skipping, children prefer to play these electronic games and TV games and stuff. Your advice to parents on this?
Well, children are children and we're living in a world of technology. So we can't eliminate this from their lives completely, but we can limit the times that they spend on it. And my advice to parents is to actually use these tasks as rewards for good behavior or activity outside, and then say, now you can spend 5 minutes playing your game on the iPad or watching your half-an-hour television program. I would, really stress that the kids choose 1 or 2 programs, and that's the only programs that they would be able to watch. Other than that, they have to explore what they're going to do with the rest of the time. Otherwise, we're keeping their brains very stagnant, and they're not exploring and coming up with their own ideas.
Of course, you can comment anytime you want, but I just wanted to ask you for your views in terms of, how you support these kids who find it difficult, to be physically active, how to encourage parents to help them in that regard.
I think always, as with adults, you would try and get the child to do something that they enjoyed. Often children will do a physical activity if it's with the parents because they like that time with the parents. I always ask if dads are around that they become involved because so often if dad does it... but things like swimming, for example, many children, even if they're not particularly good swimmers, love to be in a pool. So if there's a local pool or the school has a pool, to really encourage that. But a lot of physical activity can be fun. Roughhousing, those obstacle courses can be a lot of fun. Playing ball, going if there's a local park to climb. Children should have physical activity every single day. It helps with emotions.
That's an excellent point to just hold it off here as we go for a quick commercial break.
with us, because when we return, we turn our focus to what some regard as the most difficult stage in life, the adolescent stage.
Into Africa. This is the Kingdom of Swaziland. The leader is His Majesty King Mswati III. Swaziland got independent from Britain on 6 September in 1968. The population is more than 1 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Lilangeni.
Now, the adolescent stage is often regarded by many as very delicate but important for both adolescent children and their parents. Now, in addition to physiological growth, some crucial intellectual, psychological, and social development aspects are integral parts of this phase, all designed to help the child identify his or her own identity, and prepare for adulthood. Now, let's learn some more about what to expect, I beg your pardon, during this period. And we still have our three guests. Anita Dikeri Wagner, I'll say it correctly this time, Prof. Lorna Jacqueline, and Mumtaz Ahmad. Now, the child is growing now, okay? We're off middle childhood. We're now in that difficult stage, the adolescent stage, 13 to 18. Let's start with you, Mumtaz, in terms of physical development of this child.
I think that the word difficult is something we need to stress on, because it's difficult on the whole family. Physically, this child is now, or this adolescent, this person is growing into using skills in a more collaborative manner. So it's not just being able to time and kick a ball, but now he's using it in sporting matches, and he's now being able to be competitive with that type of sport. There's a lot of physical changes with the body, and the child or the adolescent starts to wonder, how do I get myself to be better in this stage? And they become more competitive beings as well. And there's more emphasis on how to refine skills and make them or fine-tune what they're doing. So in terms of just holding a pencil, now they need to be writing, creative writing, copying from a blackboard, being able to write while someone's talking. So all of those skills actually pull together, and we're not just doing gross motor, fine motor, and perception, but we're using all the pathways together in the brain.
Interesting, you talk about writing from the copying from the blackboard. Now it's all electronic, and it's the speed with which they are able to type messages.
Yes, yes.
Now, Prof. Jacqueline, taking it from there now, she mentioned there's body changes. Let's start with the girls. So, clearly, there's some changes that happen there.
Well, so it's a very important stage for both girls and boys, because they're going through physical development. So as their body's changing, their hormones are. It's based on hormonal development, so they're emotionally very sensitive. Girls of this stage are at very high risk of, they become depressed, they become moody, they really do need to be talking to their parents, and they're becoming sexually active. So parents need to realize that in this age, girls and boys are sexually active. So this is where they need to be talking to their children about sexuality. And
just staying on the girls a little bit, because oftentimes, you know, it's a problem for some parents and the children themselves, especially around the first period. Okay. Some schools obviously, you know, are quite advanced, and they tell the children, and, you know, the children know what to expect. But in certain instances, it may be a problem.
You see, the problem, and school education is excellent, but the schools teach the physiology of sex and the physiology of development. They don't teach the emotional aspect or relationships around sex and development. So parents need to be talking about sex within a relationship situation and what it means to have a meaningful relationship with somebody. So that sex isn't just looked at physiologically, it's a commitment, it's caring about somebody, it's a cultural context of sex. And parents, we need to support parents to be more open, because I think parents are scared about talking about it. They sometimes feel disempowered about talking about sex, and they think, well, the school's done it. You know, so a child comes, yes, Mom, I know everything. And that's not true. They only know that little bit that the school was supposed to. So you can discuss it. Well, what have you heard about it? What do you understand? What is the meaning of this for you?
Yeah, maybe because it's obviously psychological, behavioral. Let's hear from Anita here. You know, in terms of what these youngsters go through. Because you often get stories that they often get depressed, their behavior often changes. I mean, their peers exert so much pressure on them that, you know, they start changing, they become rebellious and so on. Please take us through some of what's normal and what's not normal. Basically.
I think it's a difficult time in a child's life, but a very exciting time. But often parents become disempowered in this process, and so they stop talking to their children. And it's very important that adolescents be held within their home, within the school, and within the broader community, so that the adolescents who do best are the ones who are actively involved at school, who are doing homework, who are participating in extramurals. The adolescents most at risk are the ones who become isolated or who gravitate towards negative peer groups. So adolescents are influenced by the peer group, and we need to try and help them to form the most positive peer group possible. But adolescents long for adult contact, and we need to try and find ways to keep that going. Often it's not the parent that they'll listen to, but it may be an aunt or an uncle or somebody in their church. So someone else who's older and who can provide almost that parenting, but it isn't specifically the parent.
Yeah, but somebody they can identify with.
And talk to. And adolescents need high levels of supervision. And in some communities, we're not providing that sufficiently.
I mean, the problems we're seeing today is that of, you know, drug abuse or substance abuse. And it obviously starts, you know, at this age. Obviously, we always, you know, send out messages to try and discourage substance and alcohol abuse at this age. Perhaps we'll get back to, you know, how we can support the, you know, the kids. Now, just going back to the issue of puberty. We said with girls, they develop breasts,
So they develop breasts, they start menstruating, so which they have to learn to accept and to manage. And it also happens at different ages. So if you're the first girl that starts menstruating in your class, I mean, it's difficult to manage, although...
Tell us about the age, generally, when it starts.
So it can start at 8. Which is very young, which then becomes difficult. But around about 12, girls are becoming more mature, physically mature than they were decades ago. And so by 12, most girls will be menstruating, but it also depends. So girls that are very well developed, girls that are growing well, girls that are a little bit... have got more weight will actually menstruate earlier. So it's dependent on growth. And the research has shown that girls who develop earlier lack self-esteem, whereas boys that develop earlier have got better self-esteem. So it's not easy for the girl to be the first one in her class. So parents need to understand that she's going through a tough time. And in a year or two, everybody will be in the same position, and then she'll be fine.
Okay, we spent quite enough time on girls now. What about boys? What actually happens to boys?
Well, the problem with boys is that they start becoming a bit smelly, they start developing
smelly,
pimples.
that's quite...
And again, it's managing that. It's managing being cool with the girls. So having pimples and being a bit smelly is not that cool. So it's again helping them to manage themselves and to manage the way they behave, the way they dress. I mean, girls become very important at this stage. So it's understanding that their relationship.
And Mumtaz, in terms of, you know, the physical stature, the growth spurt happens in this age group, isn't that so?
I think that we're having growth spurts throughout, but the most significant one happens through these years, and the body starts to change, and the body identification with that body is also something that's very important, where they develop what we call body scheme and a body image, and they need to have positive thoughts to these body changes, because the negative thoughts then just flood off a whole cycle of negative, you know, dealings after that. And
I think with boys in terms of muscular strength and, you know, the association with sport and so on,
Yes, and, you know, just this idea that society creates that you have to look a certain way to play a certain sort of, you know, game or competitive sport and things like that. And those type of changes need to be supported quite significantly by the entire team, parents, teachers, and, you know, the peers.
Okay. Maybe we'll leave it on that note, because I'd like us to come back to support now in the next segment. Let's go for a quick break.
When we return, we focus on supporting the adolescent child. Don't go away.
The session musicians, you want a particular sound on your record. Who do you get? Abo Butemp, Abo Victor Masond, Abo Godfrey Mtena. So these are the people who play a very, very vital role in making us.
The South African Horror Fest is the only inclusive event of its kind over Halloween season. It screens a host of exciting horror or thriller movies from around the world.
Shishani achieved stardom when she won a live music competition in Namibia titled Last Band Standing in 2012.
Join Musam Khalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Your child spends more time at school than anywhere else. Schools have a major effect on children's health and behavior. Physical activity and sports also play a major role in shaping up learners. Children with support from both parents and teachers have a very positive attitude towards learning.
I'm a hockey player at Krugersdorp High School, and you know I love it because you know the team ethic and you know the togetherness with the boys, and you know it's socially like, because you know there's outdoor hockey and there's indoor hockey, and with both you get to meet new people and you know you get to interact a lot.
Here at Krugersdorp we have different types of sports for different types of learners. That brings us together and also keeps us away from the streets. Here at Krugersdorp, we pride ourselves with our badge. That instills in us honor, pride, and hard work.
I couldn't have asked for better with such difficult times, especially during grade 11 being such a difficult and busy year. Every single teacher is there to help. We have lots of counselors at the school that really help you time manage. We have the deputy principals and our principal who are more than willing to lend a helping hand and help you time manage whenever you need it. Especially after being elected prefect, it gets extremely busy, and just being involved in a school really lets you feel like you are a part of something.
There is also a resident for some children, and they enjoy everything about it.
It feels like a home wherever you are. You're with the boys. You're brothers, you're not friends, you grow up with each other, you will be life friends forever. The staff members of the Boys Res are brilliant. They do go out of their way to make sure we get the best of what we need. help us with our work, care about us beyond just the hours and go beyond the extra mile. And the staff is just brilliant. They take care of us, they look out for us, and the studies, they make sure we study, they make sure we work hard. They instill in us a feeling of being proud of being in the school, being proud of young men and preparing us for the real world.
The environment should be a very safe and healthy place for your child. The adolescent experience is strongly influenced by parents and peers. In addition, school plays a major part in the psychosocial, intellectual and vocational development of adolescents.
The challenges change from year to year. Different children have different challenges, but I think generally speaking, peer pressure is a big challenge for the younger adolescent. I think as children get older, they learn to stand up for themselves. And often I think they use peer pressure as an excuse, but definitely peer pressure and wanting to fit in.
Teachers, school activities and school culture all provide raw material that contributes to the adolescent's growing sense of self and increasing base of knowledge and skill.
I think we see different reactions from parents depending on how close the relationship are with the children. Often we'll find parents and they'll be, we don't even know about the problem, and that should tell you what the relationship are at home. Many times also when we find parents, they are actually glad that we saw it, maybe they're shy to come and tell us. And then we can refer and do family counselling or then help the child from the school side.
Well, there's various challenges that you go through and that you experience as a counsellor due to the demographic of our country as well in the school. There's various challenges like socioeconomic challenges and everything that you need to keep in mind. Also, there are different type of religions and cultures in our school as well. So to counsel each kid is very unique, and it's a very unique challenge to give them also the necessary steps that they need to overcome their challenges.
Parents who find it not easy to deal with their teens is not the end of the world. Mrs. Hart, who teaches life orientation in Krugersdorp High School, deals with adolescents on a daily basis. She had this advice to give to such parents.
My recommendation is the day your child is born, you start building relationships, you start setting the boundaries. I know teenagers can be very trying, but at the end of the day, you've just got to love them. And a child who knows that he's loved and you have his best interests at heart responds differently to discipline.
Very interesting. Now, it is often held that teenagers are busy figuring out the world for the second time. They often feel that parents just don't understand and respect their views. And in fact, some feel that their parents are out of touch with reality and live in a different world. At the same time, though, they feel very strong that they need to be supported by their very parents. Let's continue our discussion with our three guests here. And by the way, I've just learned during our break that, in fact, we were looking at this Krugersdorp High School insert, and in fact, Professor Lorna Jacqueline matriculated from Krugersdorp High School. I'm sure you must have felt proud looking at that school.
It is great to see that the school continued to be such a great school.
Right. Okay. In terms of, we've spoken, maybe let's start with you, Mumtaz. We spoke about physical activity, the importance of physical activity earlier on in the early years. Now, this time around, we're not only talking about those that participate in sport, but in general, because this is an important thing. Everybody should be physically active. Your advice in terms of promoting physical activity in school children?
Yes, I think it's a very important component because we cannot expect good academics if the body is not well developed and if there's not good physical activity. Right. The thing that I would suggest is that routine is a very important thing, and up to the ages of adolescence, and that an exercise routine of some sort, physical education, whether it be a peer group that's gotten together to do some sort of exercise, it's definitely something that should be done on a daily basis. It's almost like we have a battery, and if the battery runs low, we need to recharge that battery. And it's that type of activity and movement that gets the battery charged. And obviously, delays things or prevents things like obesity and malnutrition and all of those type of things. So definitely something that should be built into the child's daily life, and they should know it's time to do something physical now, and so let's go and explore with that. And for those who have the sporting fields and those who have the interest, for them to explore as much as they can, and for parents to give the opportunity for them to explore in the different areas, so that they can, going into adulthood, choose what they would like to refine and what they would like to take with into adulthood.
Okay. Anita, there was a lot about relationships in the clip that we saw. And clearly this is another difficult area now. Let's talk about relationships in these youngsters now. Mainly relationships as in, friends, same gender, love relationships, and relationships with parents.
All three important.
Yeah.
I think one of the huge difficulties for modern parents is that the relationships that children have are often invisible to their parents because they take place through social networking. So unlike my generation where you spoke on the phone at home and your mother heard everything you said, our children have private relationships. We often don't know the content of those. I think parents do need to make it clear that they can go onto their children's phones and check up every now and then, because a lot happens there. I think that parents have to maintain the relationship with their children, even when their children are not talking to them. So to try and keep those channels of communication open.
So you're saying basically there will be times where children are not talking to their parents?
Absolutely. And the parent wants to talk and wants to listen. I think that we as parents, we often talk too much and listen too little. I'm sure my sons would say that very, very clearly. So sometimes we need to just be open to listening, even when we don't agree. Adolescents are hungry for relationship, but they're fragile and they are easily hurt by relationships and by the pain of love affairs that go wrong. And sometimes we don't acknowledge that because we think it's a bit silly if you've been in a relationship for 2 days and you're heartbroken that it's ended. But for the adolescent, that can be very real.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why we're seeing suicide threats and that sort of thing in that age group. And that's going back to you, Prof. Jacqueline, I mean, we spoke about physical activity. Your comment on nutrition and general health maintenance in the adolescents.
So it becomes complicated. Because when the children are small, you make them their lunch, you make them have breakfast, and you can really manage their nutrition. Now they want pocket money and they want to buy what they want to buy. So it is much more complicated, and that's where laying down the ideas of what you should eat has to start earlier, because if you haven't done that, they're going to be 25 before they look at themselves and say, I'm not eating well. And basically the brain has got to be fed during, otherwise if they're not eating, if they're having a Coke at lunchtime, well, it will keep them awake because of all the caffeine, but it's not going to meet their nutritional needs. And the boys, in fact, are starting to do bodybuilding. So if you use the fact that they're very aware of their bodies and what their bodies should look like, and just really good guidance from the school and from the home, and realistically, at this age, they're going to eat what you put in front of them. So if you've got a good nutritious meal, if you're not having breakfast, nobody's going to have breakfast. So it's really around what's happening in a family to demonstrate what should happen, and again, to be in tune with your child. The young girl who wants to lose a bit of weight, support her. The young chap who wants to put on a bit of muscle, support him. I mean, it's important that they feel that you understand what they need and actually supporting what they need at that point.
And then what about general health checks? I mean, I know that in this age, I beg your pardon, not too many of them worry about having to go and see a doctor for a general check. I mean, they only go and consult a doctor if they're ill. Your advice?
So the tendency is to check the vision and the hearing of young children and then say it's okay.
Right.
But it's not. It doesn't mean your vision especially is not static. So at about the age of 14, that's where your visual acuity starts changing, your eyes changing all the time. So visual checks. So again, it's the child who's academically is dropping, the child who says, I can't see what's on the board, the child who's stopping to concentrate. These children, if they're regressing in any way, they need to go and have their vision tested, their hearing tested, and just have a health check. Again, if they're not gaining weight, if they seem to be getting skinny, they need to go and see a doctor.
Okay, well, ladies, it's been a fascinating discussion. Unfortunately, that's how we come to the end of the show because we've run out of time. Okay, so that's how we come to the end of our show today. Remember that you can share your views, comments on Facebook by going to SABC Health Talk and like our page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Health Talk or drop us an email at healthtalk@sabc.co.za. So join us again next week on SABC News. And remember that you can watch repeat of these shows at 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. tonight, or simply get them on the YouTube channel. So from me, Dr. Sello Mutaung, it's a very warm goodbye, and thank you so much for being with us on Health Talk today. Cheerio.
This week we are taking you around the country.